So today we are going to talk about procurement, which is a very interesting topic. If I did it in the classroom, I'll do some activities before we start this. However, we are very unfortunate. We can't do that today. So in procurement, do you know the meaning of procurement? Procurement actually means outsourcing. So outsourcing is a very frequent thing which happens in Sri Lanka. Because we try to outsource everything and our government prefer that, mainly because outsourcing is cheaper, mainly with this current market with Chinese goods. Everything is outsourced. Even you can see the general items which we use at home, which at Vesak lanterns, if we get as an example, that's also outsourced. Because it's cheap. I don't know why people can make it with this some degradable things like this bamboo. However, people like to outsource this because that use lanterns with plastic can be reused. So it's for the easiness, not money actually at that case. However, this outsourcing has become a very frequent and common thing everywhere, in your house also. But now with this, in this current situation with coronavirus and everything, we try to reduce outsourcing to the minimum. Even fresh produce, we try to produce at home. At my house, I have 2 children and I try to keep them with the things less outsourced. So I think you understand now the meaning of outsource or procurement. We are trying to get the things from outside in simple terms. Okay, so that is outsourcing or procurement. Government mainly like to use this term procurement. However, organizations and companies, they use the term outsourcing. Okay. So these are the main topics that would be covered. So first of all, let's talk about the importance of procurement management. And then these are the processes we are talking about: planning procurement, conducting procurement, administering procurements, and closing procurements. We'll be talking about these 4 topics today. So before going to the processes, to highlight the importance of procurement management. So what is procurement or outsourcing means? Acquiring goods and services from an outside source. Okay, it's not produced inside. Instead, it's acquired from outside, mainly because of the money factor. It's cheap to outsource rather than constructing it itself in the company. So purchasing is another term which we can use, or outsourcing. So offshore outsourcing, this outsourcing is actually most of the time is a debate. It's mainly because although the benefit we get, the cheapness, more than that, actually we need to think about our own natural products. So there's debate going on. Rather than this always talking about money, we have to think about other factors as well. So it's up to you. You have to think about that. So you need to think about your own country as well. So talking about debates on outsourcing, some companies like Walmart, they prefer not outsourcing at all, but some companies, they promote outsourcing. But when thinking about nationality, actually a country should develop things by itself so it can survive. At this situation also, do you know why we can survive in a severe condition like this? Because we don't need to outsource our foods, especially. However, the countries which have 4 seasons, they can't cultivate foods when there's a winter season. So we have actually good luck in Sri Lanka that we can cultivate foods anytime with any weather. So it's actually, we are fortunate to have born in such a country, but we are very unfortunate we are not using that. And we try to outsource each and everything, including the foods. So you have to think about them because you are the future generation, not us. So if you as little think a little bit, it's also worth. So that's why some companies like Walmart, their managers persuade they have the thinking of nationality, so they prefer not to outsource at all. They try to do their thing by their own, so they survive what in critical situations like this. So and about this IT, the software development, most of the things are outsourced. IT outsourcing survey, if you look at the survey results, and all the, if you look at the countries like India and Sri Lanka, many IT companies have outsourced their, they have different branches, especially in countries, third world countries like Sri Lanka and India. Why? Because they can hire the labor market for a less wage. So they have to pay them less, and they are very well educated with IT. So if you go to a Western country like European country, those have to pay a very high salary, and most of the many people don't get such education in IT, and it's not frequent like in Sri Lanka or India. So application development is the most popular form of IT outsourcing. So you can see even in Sri Lanka, there are very good companies which have some branches or they have outsourced in Sri Lanka. So their main organization is in maybe in other European country. However, they have outsourced that. Even the companies which develop car, like manufacturing car companies, they have their branches in these third world countries because of the low cost labor. So in IT functions, IT organizations, if you think so if you look at these survey results, this is something quite old. So if you can see on the internet more new results than this if you wish. So so this disaster recovery services accounts for total IT outsourcing is higher score like 50%. So that's how IT outsourcing survey results shows. So you can see why people outsource, especially in IT application development. So why do we outsource? So with this basic background, I think now you can identify the main points why we outsource. So we outsource actually to allow client organization to focus on its core business. We are trying to do our core business rather than doing other things which can be purchased or outsourced. As an example, assume that you and your three of your friends are getting together and start an IT company. Okay. Soon after first 3-4 years, you get a lot of work to do. So you need to hire more employees, and you need to purchase more personal computers. So then would you ever manufacture your personal computers at your company? You will not. Why? Because there are very cheap personal computers which can be bought from the offshore market. So you need to focus on your own core business, application development, and you would not focus on building PCs for your company. Okay, so that's why one advantage of outsourcing is we can focus on our core business and we can give the other things to be outsourced. And the second thing is to reduce fixed and recurrent costs. Recurrent costs are frequently occurring costs over and over. So since we can outsource these things, we can reduce both fixed and reoccurring costs. And we can access skills and technologies. So if you look at online outsourcing, many of the online outsourcing, so in these topmost categories, you can see the skill market is there. So if you have some skill, you can be You can enter to a website where you also can sell your skill. So that's the skill market, online skill market. So there you can get, I mean, if you want to do something, so you can find the most skilled person. So that's mean you are trying to outsource that. So you can access skills and technologies using this outsourcing rather than using your own people in your IT company. You can, if you can find a better person for that particular activity from the market, online market, that would be the best. And it would provide flexibility rather than you are trying to do it by yourself, then you have to restrict to the resources you have. However, if you are outsourcing it, it would give you some flexibility and it would increase accountability as well. So you are giving the responsibility for an outside source, so you don't want to worry about that too much. So you are accountable for that. So actually, we do this outsourcing. We are doing this outsourcing. Contract is the main legal document you would have in between you and the supplier. So it's a mutually binding agreement and it's a legal document. So it would obligate the seller to provide the specified product or services, and it would obligate the buyer to pay for them. Okay, so we have to pay for them, and as well, the seller has to provide what we have specified. Okay, if you don't have a legal document like this, never these two parties would satisfy each other. Sometimes the buyer may not pay the amount of money, and sometimes the seller may not provide the specified product. Okay, so contracts can clarify these responsibilities and sharpen the focus on key deliverables of a project. So when you are writing a contract, you should keep in mind it's a legal document. You need to specify the product really well. Okay, so to give the specified product for the buyer. So there are, that's why procurement management is important. There are two parties involved, not only your team members. So the buyer is your team, and seller would be outside resource, and you don't have access to. So having contact with them, we don't have much knowledge about these people. We have not done any purchases before. Then this contract would help you to specify those things and legally bind these relationships. So it's very important to manage this procurement because of that reason. So this is something happening between two parties. So these processes include planning procurements and conducting procurements, administering procurement, and closing procurement. So let's go one by one and see what these terms mean. In planning procurements, we identify which project needs can be best met by using product and services outside the organization. So there we are trying to identify which need to be procured. Okay. So if there's no need to buy anything, do we need to procure? No. If we can buy ourselves with our staff, so in your IT project, with your current resources, you don't need to procure. So this procurement management does not come into picture in that case. However, most of the time, some things need to be procured. At least some part of your project, you may think that you need to outsource. Assume that you are developing a website. So after developing the main functionalities, you may need to outsource that for a better design. Okay. So if you don't have a good design at your own, so you may need to outsource that. So there are most of the time something that need to be outsourced. So you need to identify that in the planning procurement stage. So these are the main tools for planning purchases and acquisitions. Actually, we are talking about one of them, make or buy analysis. So there we are trying to get an estimate how much money would we spend on making and how much money would we spend on buying. So which is figure would help you to decide whether it's better to outsource or not. Okay. So this is some kind of financial analysis. So let's see an example. So assume that you can lease an item you need for a project for $800 per day. So to purchase the item, the cost is $12,000 plus a daily operational cost of $400 per day. How long will it take for purchase cost? Same as lease cost. So take a piece of paper and a pencil. So this is year 5 actually, year 5 well, mathematics question if you see. So you can just write an equation which would help you to find the number of days to make the purchase cost to be the same to be as the lease cost. Okay. So it's better to mute your microphone if you're at home and everyone is shouting at home. So, so make or buy solution, if you look at this equation, so we can write the equation like this. D is the number of days. It would allow me to make these two sides equal. So 12,000 plus 400 into number of days. So there should be a multiplication sign here. And after 800 also there should be multiplication here. So subtracting 400D from both sides, you would get the equation like this, and the number of days it would take for 12,000 to be equal to the amount of money you spend would be 30 days. So that means if you need the item for more than 30 days, it's more economical to what? Buy it. So if it's less than 30 days, what would happen? If it's less than 30 days, what would happen? So it's better to buy rather than buying it. Okay. Sound coming up. What's that sound? Okay. So what is this Helabima TV? Who is that? Who has the name Helabima? And what's that sound coming from? It's the sound is coming from the Helabima TV. The other people has muted their microphones. What is Helabima TV? Who is that? So don't make shouts. It's very difficult to handle with the sounds, okay? Okay. Hello. Hello. මේ කවුද එළබීම TV කියලා ඉන්නේ? මේ එයාගේ mic එක mute කරන්න කිව්වා. හරි. Okay, there are different types of contracts that can be used in different situations. So if you see, there are four major contracts here. The first one is fixed price or lump sum contracts. And the second one is cost reimbursable contract, time and material contracts, and unit price contracts. So these are categorized because so you need to know, since this is a legal binding document, you need to know what different types you can follow. The first one is fixed price of lump sum contracts. So here fixed total price would be defined in the contract. So to purchase this item, we would pay this amount of money. Okay, so it's fixed price. Cost reimbursable contracts means for the seller, we are paying for direct and indirect costs as well. So the cost can be reimbursable. So the term itself explains that. And time and material contracts is the hybrid of both first and second contract types. And if you look at the last one, unit price contracts. So in unit price contracts, so we are trying to pay for the seller a predefined amount per unit. Like in the electricity bill, if you see, for the first 10 units, we would pay this much. In the next 10 units, we would pay this much. Like that, the unit in this type of contracts, for each unit, the amount which we are going to pay is defined. Okay, so those are unit price contracts. These are the main four different types of contracts. However, your contract we may include all of these four categories. Okay, sometimes in some cases. So sometimes your contract may not put into any of these four different types. Maybe a collection of these four types, or maybe two types or three types, or even four. So if you look at the more about this first type, second type, cost reimbursable contract, that again can be redivided into different sections. First one is cost plus fixed fee. The second one is cost plus incentive fee. Third one is cost plus percentage of cost. You can see all of them are cost reimbursable. So at last, the final cost is reimbursed, paid. So the person who are providing the service is paid off at the end for the costs. Okay. However, the cost is different in these three major types. So first type, cost plus fixed fee. So initially, we are agreeing in this contract type to pay a fixed amount plus the cost. Okay, so that fixed amount may be determined from different perspectives. So one may be percentage of estimated cost. Okay, so initially we are given by the person who is selling an estimated fee. Like assume that you are going to buy a set of PCs for your IT company. So you are calling quotations, okay, from several people. So after you are calling quotations, several suppliers would send us quotations. So from these quotations, if you are following this cost plus fixed fee, the amount we are agreeing in the contract is actually the real cost plus a fixed fee based on percentage of estimated cost. So actually these suppliers, assume that there are four suppliers, okay, maybe seeing the LG, or likewise the suppliers would send us quotations. The amount is actually estimated amount. The cost is estimated according to our specifications, our requirement. They are sending us quotations. These quotations would describe some estimated cost. Maybe Singer says we can do this for 1.5 lakhs. Okay. Maybe LG says you can do for 2 lakhs. Okay. So that's the estimated amount. That's not the final fee which we have to pay. Final cost of the product. Okay. So in this first type, we are trying to pay the cost. So assume that real cost is 2 lakhs. So we are trying to pay 2 lakhs plus percentage, let's say 10% from the estimated cost. So single estimated cost was 1.5 lakhs. So 1.5 into 10% would be the amount we are paying for the seller. Okay. So that's based on estimated costs. Okay. So I'm trying to give you the difference between the first type and the last type. So look at the last type now. So it says cost plus percentage of cost. So in that case, cost is 2 lakhs plus a percentage of cost, 10% of the cost, 10% of 10% into 2 lakhs. Okay. So in the first case, 10% into 1.5 lakhs because it's estimated, depending on the estimated cost. Okay. So this is depending on the total cost accurate. Okay. So that's the difference between the first one and last one. So the middle one, the cost plus incentive fees, the buyer pays supplier for a allowable performance clause plus a predetermined fee and an incentive bonus. So that's incentive bonus is something like this. You tell that supplier, so if you can do this within 2 months, we would pay this amount, okay, $5,000 more. Likewise, so it's an incentive to do your work on time or before the time they say. Okay. So that's that. So if you put this into a chart like this, if you are trying to look at the risk of the buyer and the seller, you can see something like this. So the first one is cost plus percentage of cost, which have a high risk for the buyer. Why does the cost plus percentage of cost have a high risk for the buyer? So if you look at this problem, the example we discussed. So if we agree for this cost plus percentage of cost, so always the seller would try to increase the cost. Okay, he would say, I need to pay for this, I need to pay for that. So so he knows if he increases the cost, he will receive more from the percentage of cost. Okay, so that's why it has a higher risk for the buyer and lower risk for the seller. Okay, the seller would get higher amount of money back if the cost of product is increased. Okay. If you look at the other end, firm fixed price. The price is fixed initially. Okay. Most of the time, the prices of the products, they don't decrease. Okay. Most of the time, they increase. So the buyer's risk is low and the seller's risk is high. Okay. So the other things, other types of contracts lie in between. You can see and compare like this later. So talking about the contract, it's contract closure is really important. Contract should include specific closures, so that would uniquely define how you are going to close that contract. Okay, so this termination of clause is a contract clause that allows the buyer supplier to end the contract. So there should be guidelines or some a pre-arranged agreement how you are going to close the contract. That also need to be included in the contract. So there are some terms which we are now discussing, like SOW and request for proposals and request for quotes. So these are actually things which we need to do during this procurement process. So that's why I have included this. You need to know the meaning of these terms and which happens when. So the statement of work is SOW is a description of work required for a procurement. So sometimes which we are going to procure, would not essentially be a product, okay, like a PC with some specifications. It would be a part of a certain development of an application. So it should describe the work, okay. So the statement of work would do that. So it should describe only the work required for a particular contract, okay. It would call the contract statement of work. So it's like a scope statement. So here you can see an example. So not an example, actually template. So the first would be scope of the work. It would describe the work to be done in detail and the location where you are planning to do that. The contractor should come to the workplace, or he would do it at home, or whatever it is. And the period, you should define that very well. And the deliverable schedule like which deliverable should be delivered at this time period, which comes in next likewise. And applicable standards, if you have any quality standards, especially you have to specify it. And the acceptance criteria, how you are going to accept their produce, how you are going to agree in between whatever they have produced. And the special requirement, if there are any, you need to mention that pen also. And these are also other procurement documents which should be important in these procurements, or do we need contracts? So the request for proposals. So these are actually not connected, okay? Statement of work is actually part of a contract which would describe only the work required for the particular contract. So this request for proposal is something else. So these two are not connected, okay? So this request for proposal, you can see here. So it happens when, assume that in that case where you are trying to buy several PCs for your IT company. So you are trying to request proposals from different vendors, okay? So it's used to solicit proposals from a particular sellers. The sellers have to write a proposal. So you can see request for proposal template, purpose of the request for proposal, and organization's background, basic requirements, hardware and software environment. Like it would be specific to the particular thing you are going to outsource. So possible appendices, current system overview, system requirements, volume and size data, required contents of vendors' responses. So this is a template only. So this actually is specific for the particular contract you are doing with the vendor. So however, the main purpose of request for proposal is to solicit proposals from prospective sellers. So it means the sellers are writing these proposals and sending it to you, to your IT company. Okay, so those are called the requests for proposals. So actually, these proposals are sent from the different vendors. So you are writing these requests, specifying the work which need to be done. So purpose of request for proposal maybe in the previous example to purchase 100 PCs for the company. Okay, so the sellers would write their proposals according to request for proposal we prepare. Okay, the company itself prepare the request for the proposal, and the vendors would send us the proposals referring this guide. Okay, so that's how it happens. And the second type is request for quotes. So this is used to solicit quotes from or bids. So most of the time when we are doing these contracts, we call for the quotes. So when we are requesting these quotes, this is the document which are used to solicit the quotes. We need to define very carefully the specification of the product or service you are going to outsource. So bid, I think you know, it's also a short term for quotation. Sorry, it's called a tender or a quote. Quote is a short term for quotation. So it's a document prepared by the sellers. So always these bidders or people who are trying to outsource it would provide pricing for the item specified. Okay, so that need to be clearly defined by the buyer, which need to be outsourced. So those are several terms which would be important when we are working with these contracts. And the evaluation criteria. So after we collect all these proposals or bids, it's very important to prepare some form. After we collect those, there should be some way of evaluating. Okay. So initially in our procurement planning, we should define how we are going to do the evaluation and what's the evaluation criteria. So when you are issuing the formal request for proposals, you should do that. How we are going to evaluate their response or their proposals by the sellers. So actually, some proposals will look very good in paper. They write very well, like your final year projects. Your proposal is very well written. And when we talk about that with you, you talk very nicely about that project. However, when you work, you do a very little bit about things you talk in the proposal or with the meetings with the supervisor. So that should not happen. So we need to be aware of proposals that look good, and be sure to you need to be sure to evaluate the factors such as what are the past performance of this contract. How did Singer or LG work with us previously in our previous project? Or you can look at the other companies work in a condition. Maybe you may have friends there, you may have mentors from there. So you can ask them how is their behavior in this outsourcing process. So you need to evaluate those factors as well. So in the proposal, if you require, if you can ask a presentation from them, it actually allows and gives you time to ask questions about this particular product with this particular seller. So so it's very important for evaluation. You can ask them about the past performance, and you can ask them to describe their previous products, how they do that very well using these presentations. And conducting procurements is actually deciding whom to ask to do the work. Okay. So sorry, when conducting procurement, there are several steps which is carried out. First, you need to decide whom to ask to do the work, and then you need to send appropriate document to the particular sellers, and then obtain proposals or bids, and then select a seller and then award the contract. This is the normal working flow in conducting procurements. First, we decide whom to ask to do the work, and then we send appropriate documentation. So what are the appropriate documentation? So actually request for proposal is actually one of the document, maybe quotations, asking for request for quotations. So why do we have two different documents, request for proposals or request for quotations? So we use this request for proposals mainly when there are more than one way to do that. Okay. So purchasing PCs would require a request for proposals. It would not require a request for, request for quotations. It would not require request for proposals, because we write a proposal, very lengthy proposal, when there are many ways to do that work, and that particular seller would describe how he does that task. Okay. Assume that we are going to outsource part of our application production. Okay. So that can be done in different ways by different people. Okay. So we have to choose the person which we prefer the most, person or the company which we are outsourcing. So when we are doing that request for proposals or these proposals coming out is really important. So at that time, we need to write our request for proposal specifying which way we prefer. Okay. And then these are the things, specification, which we need to do in that particular application development. So then different people would write their own proposals looking at our specification. Okay. So that's the main difference. So, so this is the main workflow. So there are different approaches for procurement. You can approach the preferred vendor, or you can approach Singer or LG, maybe LG, because you have a very good relationship. Buying relationship with that company, you have bought PCs from LG, and you are not going to other company. You are doing that only with LG. Okay. Otherwise, you can approach several potential vendors. You can go for Singer, you can go for LG, and you can ask all of them to give you quotations, or you can advertise to anyone interested. Okay, so these are the different ways you can do that. And so what's a bidders conference? So you call a conference. You ask several vendors to come, not several actually. It's open. You can advertise that there's a bidders conference. Anyone can come. And you can tell about your expectations. We need to do this part of software by you, and these are our specifications. Okay, so like that in a conference, you can actually tell what you prefer, what need to be done. Okay, then the other vendors can know that. So source selection is actually, so after these several vendors send you the proposals or bids, how you are going to select the person output, who you are going to outsource with. So you need to evaluate proposals and choose the best one and negotiate the contract and award the contract. You are not going to agree with the same thing. Yeah, there need to be some specifications which need to be cleared, and also the price. Maybe you need to negotiate to some amount, and then you would award the contract. So this is a sample proposal evaluation sheet. You can see there several proposals have come for our particular software development part. And this is the criteria: technical approach, management approach, past performance, and price. So all together get 100%. So you can rate that and score that, and you can find the best proposal from this using this evaluation sheet. So this is only a template that may be different. And the seller selection, actually, organizations normally do initial evaluation for all the proposals and then shortlist, and then normally sellers on the shortlist prepare a best and final offer. We ask for a best and final offer from the sellers. Then the final output is after we select from this BA4, we can sign the final contract. And we need to administer these procurements because it ensures that sellers' performance meets contract requirements. Because since these are legal relationships, it's very important that legal and contracting professionals should be involved. So legal relationships, there should be always lawyers involved in writing and administering contracts. Okay. So so if there are changes, so since we are working on IT projects, and if you are trying to outsource part of your application development, so there would be some change requests. Okay? So there should be always, we should watch for constructive change orders, which are oral or written acts or omissions by someone with actual or apparent authority. So those needs to be handled as well. And so these are the suggestions for change control. So changes to any part of the project need to be reviewed and approved and documented by the same people in the same way that the original part of the plan was approved. Okay, so the approval need to be taken from everybody who was involved in the original preparation. So at the end, if there's some change applied, we need to do that by all the people who signed. We have to get the signatures, and acceptance from all the people who signed initially. So that's the suggestion. So then that would decrease the amount of problems that occur. And there should be impact analysis for any change requests. So we need to check how will the goods or service being provided change the scope, time, and cost or quality. So which are the main constraints of a project. So changes need to be documented, and all important meetings should also be documented, and also the phone calls. Those help to reduce the problems while communication. So project managers and teams should stay closely involved to make sure a new system will meet the business needs, and you should have backup plans, and you need to use tools and techniques like as contract change control systems and conducted performance reviews, inspections, and audits likewise. So the best practices, although these are suggestions for change control, so the best practices for the outsourcing actually are given by some companies. So this Accenture is one of the websites which would give you best practices for outsourcing. So I have pointed out few facts here, and you can log into this website. Accenture, I think they have changed their website after this. And you can see the guidance they give for outsourcing. Okay. So look at the second one, hire a partner, not just a provider. Always try to increase the relationship between the people who give you products. Don't just treat them as a person who would work for a single time. Okay, because you may require to purchase the same thing in the coming projects, and the relationships between you and the provider is really important in this case. So there are different companies as well. If you browse in the web, this is only one, and it's up to you to look at the other. So clause in procurement is actually also important, very important, because the contract should define itself how to close a contract, and we have talked about that. So in clause in procurement would involve completing and setting all the contracts. Okay. So this contract closure is a subpart of clause in procurements, as we have understood previously. So you need to, when you are closing procurement, you have to look at each and every contract in the project, and you have to resolve if there are any open items which have not delivered as we have discussed in the contract. The project team should determine if all the work was completed correctly, and update records and achieve information for the future use. Always this recording part is really important, because that knowledge may be required in future projects. So contract, actually, we discussed this. Contract should include requirements for formal acceptance and closure. So these are the tools which should assist you in contract closure: procurement audits, negotiated settlements, and a record management system, which should provide the ability to easily organize and find and achieve procurement related documents. So these are the main tools which should assist you in contract closure. So that's the end of the contents of my presentation. So I will actually upload this recording as well, and upload the quiz. By 11th, you should have the recording of the next topic, which is integration management as well. So altogether, we have talked about these all knowledge management areas in project management, and if you have any problem, please let me know. So that would help me actually to figure out the difficult places of this subject for you, and do all the past papers. I think your examination you will have only for the examination, and I don't know how that would be arranged However, be prepared for the exam. I will upload the tutorial as well, so you can do that and ask me any questions if you have through a chat window I have opened so far. So I will open another chat window for this topic as well. You can use those chat windows to discuss about problems. Like if you have problems in past papers, which you can't do, so you can raise that question and I'll arrange an online session like this and we can discuss. Okay. So thank you very much. And I again ask you to do the quizzes. And I can see in the previous quiz only 30 people have done it. I don't know what happened to the others. That's something which is accountable for the attendance of this course as well. So thank you very much and stay safe, and we will I will try to contact you via this chat windows, and if you request I can do an online session like this also for the difficult problems you meet in the past papers. And if there is any difficulty in acquiring past papers, please let me know and I'll try to upload them to the copies to the LMS. Okay, thank you very much.